Hey, Mean Matt here. I meant to do this a couple days ago on the 24th, but I obviously lost track of time. So, what better time to do this now, I guess, since June is almost over. Um, and I meant to do this. I said to myself a few years ago, I'm gonna make an anniversary video. In fact, I think I said this 10 years ago. I said I'm gonna eventually make an anniversary video on this. Um, the fact of the matter is, it's kind of a taboo thing, I think. Maybe that's not the right word to use. So, 10 years ago, um, June 24th, um, I was on my computer looking on the internet, and at that time, we had MSN Messenger. A friend of mine came and he went on there. He sent me a message and he told me that Chris Benoit died. And I thought, oh wait, that can't be right. So, he sent me a link to the WWE.com, and sure enough, there it was. And, of course, like 2 years prior, losing Eddie, it was very upsetting to me. I mean, there's a guy who, in my opinion, at that moment, I'm not trying to defend what he did. At that moment, I thought there's a guy who was a tough wrestler and all that kind of stuff, and he was also able to show emotion. He wasn't afraid to show his sorrow and all that other stuff. And so I thought, okay, there it was. And then so I went on my Facebook and I put RIP. I think it was Facebook at the time. Yeah, it was Facebook. RIP Chris Benoit. You taught us well, sir. I think that's what I put. And a few minutes after that, I got a response from another friend of mine who said, "Oh, so you're talking good things about a murderer." And I kind of questioned that. I didn't know what was going on. I don't think anybody knew what was going on at that point. So, what happened was, they had the Monday Night Raw, and it was a tribute show to Chris Benoit. You had, you know, same as always, people crying on there like CM Punk, like Edge, Adam Copeland. You had Stone Cold there, you had Triple H there. It was a tribute show. And then the next day, it was in the paper. There was a double murder suicide. Chris Benoit killed his wife and son, and then himself. Now, being the Chris Benoit fan that I was, well, Chris Benoit in WWE, more so than WCW. Excuse the interruption. I don't know what the fuck they're doing out there. So, as it turns out, I was, this guy was right to say that what he said, because I didn't know what happened, and I don't think the WWE really knew what happened until the following day. So, of course, on SmackDown, there was Vince McMahon saying that they didn't realize what had happened, so the SmackDown was a tribute to the fans and not Chris Benoit, so whatever. So my thing now was, okay, here's a guy that did this horrible act, and you can't, you can't deny that. You can't deny that anymore. They had specials on him. They had a special on him on the CBC where they talked about Benoit. They had an interview with his dad. They had an interview with Bret Hart. Then interviewed Chris Nowinski, who I guess took his brain and analyzed it, saying that with all the concussions that he sustained, he had the brain mentality of an 80-year-old Alzheimer victim. Now, I'm not one to say people are full of shit, but I don't know. He might be right. He might be onto something, because the fact of the matter is, Chris Benoit was not like that. Like I said, I thought Chris Benoit was one of those guys who was caring, was nice, had his demons, of course, everyone does. But who knew that he could pull this off? Who knew this was going to happen? So, there's two things that we could think about. Now, the fact is, there's that. He was a nice guy, and then something just went off, and he snapped, and he did what he did. Now, he could have been on shit that nobody knew about, and that's what made him that violent. Who knows? It obviously wasn't just steroids. So, I kind of looked up on the brain injury scale, whatever. And, yeah, there have been cases where, football players, guys, and men and women who came back from war and have had that kind of post-traumatic shit, and, their lives have changed forever because of the damage that is done to their brains and whatnot, I guess. So there's that, but there's also the fact that this happened, and there's no fucking way that we can allow Chris Benoit to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. I don't condone it. What I think kind of interested me was how quick the WWE was to pull Benoit from the WWE website. They took his name off of the roster. They took his name off the 2004 WWE Royal Rumble winner. They took his name off of... They took, everything. They took, they didn't sell no more toys or anything. And you know what? That's pretty fair at first. But, here's the thing. The fact of the matter is, this is a guy who did what he did, but you can't erase the past. And case in point, you have a guy like Jimmy Snuka, and I don't give a shit at what year it was, and it was a different time. Jimmy Snuka killed his girlfriend. What makes it worse is that he killed his girlfriend, the girl he was cheating on, while he was married. And yet, apparently because the jail sentence or the verdict or whatever the fuck, it didn't go through. Now you have a guy that you not only put in your Hall of Fame, but you've involved him in storylines. You had him at WrestleMania with the Legends facing Chris Jericho. Makes absolutely no fucking sense. You kept the storylines where you kept all his matches. And then, of course, he dies last year, or a few months ago, and you finally realize that, oh shit, maybe we shouldn't have did all of this shit or whatever, just because he's part of the tribe, whatever. The fact is, you treated this guy like gold, and then you get Chris Benoit, who died 10 years ago, and you blackballed him. You took him off the merchandise. You boycotted his matches. You took all his matches off WWE.com. You went out of your way to cut his face off when you had Randy Orton as the first World Heavyweight Champion at SummerSlam of 2004. So, you took that and whatever. Murder is murder. I said this before. Murder is murder. I don't care if it was you murder a man, a woman, a child, an animal. I don't care. Murder is murder. So, regardless if you had an epiphany about the whole Jimmy Snuka thing, the fucking guy killed someone in 1983, and now you fucking realized it when it's too little too late. But Benoit, you caught it early. You caught it early enough that, hey, we have to fucking take this guy off of the fucking website. And we have to erase everything Chris Benoit because of what he did. Which I, to a certain extent, agree with. Well, actually, that's not true either. I only agree with not putting him in the Hall of Fame. So, this guy doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, but I think now they're starting to lighten up on the whole thing. They're starting to put him back in that kind of spotlight, but they always, apparently they put in a warning of some kind before they do. We don't condone murder. I don't condone murder, but I'm not gonna take a guy off the WWE network or a WCW match just because he did what he did. I would never put him in the WWE Hall of Fame. And it sucks because Chris Benoit himself, and here's the other coin, the other end of the coin. Chris Benoit himself screwed everyone else because we could have had Chris Benoit versus CM Punk. Just imagine what it would have been like to see Chris Benoit versus CM Punk, so he can become, or whoever could become ECW champion. Imagine what it would have been like if Chris Benoit would have become WWE champion. And we're never going to see that. We never have seen it. And I think that's the only part of this whole thing that pisses me off, besides the fact that he took 2 other lives. And now, I mentioned before that they're going to make a movie about him, and they're going to somehow talk about the death of Nancy and Daniel and Chris, which I don't know how they're going to go with it, because it's always funny watching these things and trying to do a biopic when you don't know what exactly happened and you weren't there. And this is even more difficult because you have Chris Benoit, Nancy, and Daniel, and nobody else in the house, so they don't know what happened. just the police that came in there. And then, going a few months back, saying, or watching, I guess, the Chris Jericho podcast with Nancy Benoit's sister, talking about things that, nobody's ever known, like Benoit looking at the things like how to strangle somebody easily or something like that. I don't know. There's possibilities that Benoit really did want to do really did want to kill Nancy. The thing with Daniel is, I don't know what the hell was going on, because all we know is that he loved Daniel and that he adored Daniel, was what his dad said. So why would he do that? Why would he kill his son? There's a lot of things that nobody knows. So when I think about Chris Benoit, I try not to think about that. I try not to think about the murders. I try not to think about that. I try not to think about the monster that he became. I try to think about tag team champions with Chris Jericho. I try to think about the World Heavyweight Championship where he won it at WrestleMania. And he stood face to face with his best friend, Eddie Guerrero, and they held up their championships together. I try to think about the man he was, the man that, the kind, passionate man he was. So it really boggles the mind that I have no idea how or why he did what he did. I mean, I know how he did it. I mean, he was out under the influence. He had the brain injury. I don't know. I can't make any excuses, and I'm not trying to. It's just one of those things that's always going to be weird. Am I saying WWE should blacklist him forever? No. I mean, don't put him in the Hall of Fame, but don't take his face out of everything. Yeah, that's basically how it should be. I don't condone what he did. Never, ever condone what he did. But I can't understand why taking his face out of matches and the website and the 2004 Royal Rumble history is going to change anything. That's just my opinion. Anyways, controversial subject matter. And if the movie comes out, I can't wait to see it. Because I want to see how they're going to fucking do it. Because with, like I said, any biopic, you have no idea how it's going to turn out. Anyways, talk to you later. Bye.